this video will cover golden writing key number 1, which is how to develop a storyline with an intriguing opening paragraph, an emotional ride in the middle, and a memorable conclusion. The 3 primary components of well-crafted prose. A comment I often hear from wannabe inspirational writers is, I want to tell my story, but I'm not sure if I'm healed enough to give advice. The exercise I'll introduce at the end of this video easily solves this conundrum. Before we begin today's lesson, I want to talk a bit about authenticity. Authenticity is crucial in inspirational authorship. If you want readers to care about what you have to say, they need to feel that your writing is integral. Being honest, however, does not require that you reveal parts of your story that you're not ready to share. Nor does it mean that you must reveal the city or town where an unfortunate event happened or the identity of those involved. For instance, if you were assaulted by a family member, it would be acceptable, and in my opinion, advisable, to recount your story without mentioning your relationship to this person. Instead, you might alter their actual relationship to you, maybe by indicating that the person who harmed you was a neighbor down the block, a friend of a friend, or some other unidentifiable person. Here's why. Though you might have written the truth about what someone did or said, if it's defaming, you can be sued for libel, and the onus will be on you to prove your statements and accusations in court. Here's another piece of seasoned advice. When choosing topics to write about, consider your future goals and share the parts of your journey that feather you in that direction. Maybe in addition to authoring, you'd like to tell your story from the stage and become a motivational guru like Dr. Wayne Dyer. Fantastic. Tailor your blog, books, and articles with this laudable goal in mind. As an inspirational author, over time, you become identified with your primary topics. If you write numerous articles about weight loss, you'll become known as the author who writes about how to lose weight. Should you write a New York Times bestseller, and I hope you do, and it's about overcoming depression, you'll become known as the author who writes about depression. Write about subjects and heart-mind wisdom that most matter to you. Fields of expertise in which you'd gladly be labeled as being an authority. Okay, let's explore the components that make an opening paragraph intriguing. Here's what an opening paragraph does. 1, it introduces or hints at your story subject, your topic. 2, it includes or alludes to a struggle or conflict that will be resolved by the end of your story. And 3, it sets the tone and mood of a specific point in your healing journey. Simply stated, tone is your attitude toward your subject. Mood is the feelings you want to arouse in readers. Remember, I promised to teach you different terms, so that was tone and mood. Your opening paragraph also begins to establish your voice, or what is unique about your personality and your writing style. Your voice is revealed to readers through your word and punctuation choices, sentence and story structure, and your tone or attitude toward your topic. Your opening paragraph is the first bridge between you and your readers. You want readers to cross that bridge and become engrossed in your story. Let's examine an opening paragraph from the Heartmind Wisdom Collection. In Heartmind Wisdom Collection number 1, Shirley Burkhart contributed the chapter, Alchemy of Grief. Here's her opening paragraph, which is a narrative summary of her experience with death and loss. I cringe when I hear the saying, God only gives you what you can handle. Well, she must have assumed I was Mother Teresa, Wonder Woman, and the female Dalai Lama, all harmonized into one. In just over 3 years, I lost 6 beloved souls. A short year later, our family dog died. A solid axis of love held my core firm, but only my core as my world lurched, teeter-tottered, and reversed 180 degrees. Here's what we know from Shirley's opening paragraph. 1, her topic is about an extraordinary amount of personal loss. 2, we know that the conflict or struggle she'll provide insights about is how she survived the mountain of grief and managed to right her world after it spun out of control. Though we know Shirley lost many people she loved within a relatively short amount of time, with the exception of the family dog, we don't know who died. To find out, we must keep reading. We must also continue reading to find out how one person can survive that much grief. This is intrigue. Shirley's topic is tragic and sad. However, Shirley has balanced the weightiness of her losses by writing in a lighter tone. Though we don't yet know enough to ascertain how someone will feel after reading her story, Shirley's lighter tone suggests that the mood of her story will leave readers feeling hopeful, not depressed. Shirley referenced God as she. Shirley is obviously not a religious zealot, or she would have used the he pronoun. Neither is she a traditionalist. She's a free thinker, and likely a bit of a rebel. Her mention of Mother Teresa, the Dalai Lama, and Wonder Woman allude to the traits Shirley admires: kindness, higher consciousness, and strength. At this point in her story, though we're only studying her opening paragraph, it would be safe to describe Shirley's voice as authentic and real. She doesn't skirt around who she is or what she feels. She tells it like she sees it. I'll now talk a bit about how to create an emotional ride in the middle of your story. By emotional ride, I'm referring to how you want people to feel and think while reading your story. As an inspirational author, you definitely want your readers to feel inspired and hopeful. You do not want them to finish reading your blog chapter or book feeling depressed and hopeless. In inspirational authorship, this emotional ride is created by sharing 1, the events and circumstances that led to your aha moment or realizations, 2, your emotional and psychological reactions, and 3, the actions you took to heal yourself. Although your overall goal is to inspire hope, it would be impossible to evoke feel-good emotions in readers when you're writing about unfortunate circumstances or happenings. But you can write about adversities in a way that causes readers to root for you, to hope that you triumph. You're the hero or heroine of your story. When readers feel a kinship with you, your wins become their wins. Of course, your losses also become their losses. This means that angry rants or negative generalizations about the opposite sex, a group, organization, or society do not belong in a piece of inspirational writing. Neither is inspirational writing a vehicle for getting even with someone who hurt you. If you're motivated by revenge, your prose won't be inspiring. This is not to say that your initial draft shouldn't contain negativity, anger, and resentment. It likely will, which is great because it will help you with your healing process. However, when editing your draft, tone down any residual negativity, anger, and resentment. Your goal is to inspire others to feel hopeful and move in a positive direction, not to fuel any negativity, anger, or resentments they may be harboring. For variety, you also want to switch between narrating your story and crafting scenes. Narrating is when you simply tell readers what happened. Narrating provides readers with information, the facts, and moves your story from one point to another. Scenes, on the other hand, create images in your readers' minds and evoke feelings. If you've studied writing before, you've likely heard the old adage, show, don't tell. This solid piece of writing advice is one of the toughest concepts for new writers to grasp. Basically, what show, don't tell means is to write in a way that transfers the scene or image in your mind into a reader's mind, so that he or she can visualize the happenings you describe. Here's an example of a sentence that tells. My 7th grade teacher was an odd, grumpy, unkempt old man. Here's an example of a sentence that shows. My 7th grade teacher chewed chalk When he'd catch a classmate daydreaming, he'd glare from beneath his brow-length, scraggly gray comb-over and bean the zoned-out culprit with what was left of his white snack. Pretty funny. I actually had that teacher. Rather than simply tell readers about my 7th grade teacher, in the scene example, I gave them details which will conjure images in their heads that they can decipher or interpret how they wish. I don't need to tell readers that my teacher was odd. They will decide for themselves that he's odd because he chews chalk. They know he's grumpy because he beans his students with tiny white missiles. They know he's unkempt and old because the scraggly gray comb-over hangs down to his eyebrows. Depending on their own experiences with authority, the feeling evoked in readers will vary. One reader might feel outraged because of a similar incident when he or she was young. Others might laugh as they picture the old grump firing chalk at his students. One of the major benefits of scene writing is that your readers become witness to what happened, a fly on the wall, so to speak. This frees a reader to interpret and relate to what happened on a personal level, thereby making his or her emotional experience equally personal. You'll note from the 2 examples that showing requires more than telling in terms of words. Unless you're writing a movie script, you'll want to use both narration and scenes in your story. Telling or narrating is useful for providing details while moving your story along at a pace that keeps it interesting. We'll discuss this more in detail during the webinar series on scene writing. Right now, I want to demonstrate how to take your readers on an emotional ride by crafting scenes that they will easily be able to envision. To do this, I'll read an excerpt from Larry Chase's chapter in Heartmind Wisdom number 1. The title of Larry's chapter is Decision Day to Live or Die. Here it is. My eyes shot open. I couldn't breathe. It felt as if someone were on top of me, his murderous hands squeezing my throat closed. Gasping, I threw off the covers and bolted for the window. I need air, I need air, I need air. Awakened by my dying man's wheeze, my wife called out, Larry, are you okay? I couldn't answer. Thrusting my head into the cold night, I tried for a breath of oxygen. I barely managed a wee wisp. My lungs ached for more. I prayed my next breath would be a little bit deeper. Scorched dry by stomach acid, my throat wouldn't open. God, are you ready for me? Or are you going to let me breathe again? I coaxed in another tiny wisp, then another, repeating the process for what seemed an eternity, until little by little my throat expanded and oxygen reached my lungs. Larry's opening scene is powerful. Because he provided a play-by-play description, his readers will be able to visualize and imagine how it feels when you can't get oxygen into your lungs. Through Larry's inner dialogue with God and his wife's voiced concern, we can easily discern his desperation. We feel for him. If Larry had instead narrated this part of his story, he might have written something such as, while asleep, acid reflux scorched my throat dry. Unable to breathe, I'd awake with a start. With my wife asking if I was okay, I'd jump out of bed and dash for the window, hoping the cool night air would shock my throat open. It would take what seemed an eternity until little by little my throat expanded and oxygen reached my lungs. All the while, I'd ask God if he was ready for me or if he'd let me breathe again. By narrating his story, readers would understand that Larry was frightened because he couldn't breathe. However, they wouldn't be inspired to imagine what not being able to breathe feels like and looks like. They wouldn't think that man was terrified. His poor wife must have felt totally helpless as she watched him fight for his life. How horrible. As a guideline, your inspirational story should take readers on an emotional ride that is apportioned as follows. 25% should be about the events and circumstances leading up to your Heartmind realizations. 50% should recount your shift and tell or show readers how you changed psychologically, emotionally, and behaviorally. This might include books you've read and courses you've taken, people you met and groups you joined that positively influenced your life, or the spin-off benefits of a divine intervention or connection with a higher power. It might also include any events that happened and circumstances that changed as a result of any shifts in your actions, thoughts, and beliefs. 25% of your inspirational story should be about your message or heart mind wisdom, including your aha moment and any additional realizations you had as you journeyed forward. Here's an important note. Your message should be woven throughout your book, chapter, or blog. It should not be all nicely wrapped up with pretty prose at the end of your story. This brings me to the last portion of today's writing lesson, which is how to craft a memorable conclusion. What makes the conclusion of an inspirational story memorable is an appropriate and poignant summary that highlights your message and evokes positive feelings in the reader. Whether you're writing a blog or a chapter, your ending paragraph should be a natural conclusion to your opening paragraph. The same goes for books. Your opening chapter should relate to your ending chapter or conclusion. What readers of self-help definitely do not want in a conclusion is one that amounts to a lecture. No one wants to be told how they should think, feel, and behave. An inspiring story is meant to provide food for thought. You will alienate readers if you present your actions, thoughts, and emotions as the right way to behave, think, and feel. Let's explore a few ways to conclude an inspirational story. Patricia Connor chose to end her story in Heartmind Wisdom Collection number 1 with a poignant summary that highlights her message and evokes positive feelings in the reader. Following their memorable conclusions, some of the authors in Heartmind Wisdom added a poem or quote. We'll explore all three options, beginning with Patricia's final paragraph in her chapter, Heart Connections, a Matrix. Strengthened by my experiential, emotional, and soulful connections to the universe, nature, animals, and myself, I once again reached out into the human world. This time I was prepared. This time I was safe. Though you might not have read Patricia's story from her closing paragraph, you can easily discern that her inspirational message is about the benefits of connecting heart to heart with others, natures, the universe, and oneself. Her conclusion is definitely inspiring and memorable. Another choice for you is to, following your final paragraph in a blog post or chapter, add a quotable wisdom that sums up the inspirational message in your story. If you don't have one of your own, quote someone else. In her chapter, Out, Damn Thought, in Heartmind Wisdom number 1, Louise E. Morris added a quote after her concluding paragraph. Let's take a look. These days, although occasionally in the company of negative thoughts, their power to dominate and wound is vastly diminished, making it easier to switch tracks and get back into feeling worthwhile and loved. Thought is a powerful friend or foe. A lifetime of searching led to discovering that the only thing keeping me from achieving happiness was my thinking. Here's the quote by Suzanne K. Langer that Louise decided to add after her conclusion. Most new discoveries are suddenly seen things that were always there. The quote Louise chose aligns with and reinforces her message about the importance of becoming aware of negative self-talk. You might instead follow your concluding paragraph with a poem, which could be your own or someone else's. In her chapter, Tears in My Ears, in Heartmind Wisdom number 1, Monica Forster wrote about receiving the news that she was pregnant 3 weeks after being diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Here's her concluding paragraph and her poem. As paradoxical as it may seem, once the business of preparing to die was behind me, letting my family know how much I love them, getting my financial affairs in order, and recording a goodbye video for my son, I was able to fight for my life. A fight I continue to win as life unfolds its magic for Brad, Alexander, and me. Now let's read the poem Monica wrote. The thread of death, the joy of life. We are strong, we are brave. We are the neighborhood heroes in each other's lives. Monica Forster. Powerful poem. Monica's poem reinforces the Heartmind wisdom she wrote about in her chapter, including that there is no room for doubt in miracles. This completes today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed it and feel better equipped to tell your story. It's time for our first writing exercise. In keeping with the gold theme of the 13 Golden Writing Keys, our exercise is called Mining Your Emotions and Attitudes. Completing the exercise will solve any conundrums you might have about whether you're healed enough to share your inspirational journey in a bid to help others. All you need for this exercise is a pen or pencil and 2 blank sheets of paper. However, shortly after the webinar, you'll receive an email with a PDF file of what you'll see on the screen as I explain the exercise. You can download the file or simply refer to it when completing the exercise. At the beginning of our next webinar, I'll answer any questions you have about the exercise. Of course, you can also email or phone me if you have questions. My contact info will be on the email. Let's get started. Here's why being aware of your emotions and attitude at each stage of your healing journey is crucial for inspirational authors. Your attitudes and feelings towards events, circumstances, and people will influence the tone and mood of your story. If your feelings and attitude towards something that happened or a particular person are negative, the tone and mood of that part of your story will be negative. It's up to you to decide what you want the tone and mood of your story to be. However, it is up to your readers to decide whether your story is inspiring. Keep this truism in mind when crafting prose intended to inspire others. Remember, the tone of an inspirational story should be uplifting, and the mood you want to evoke in readers is hopefulness. The first step in mining your emotions and attitudes is drawing a circle in the center of a blank piece of paper. Inside the circle, write what you believe is your most inspiring and potent aha moment. For me, an aha moment is a realization, event, or change in circumstance that inspires someone to alter his or her life for the better. Once your aha moment is written down, around that circle, make subcircles and write anything about your primary aha moment that comes to mind. As you record one thought, more will come, so don't hesitate. Write as fast as you can and keep going until you can no longer link any additional information to your aha moment. During the exercise, an assortment of seemingly random facts, feelings, people, events, knowings, books, movies, courses, professionals, vacations, dreams, hopes, wishes, expressions, childhood memories, regrets, fears, nightmares, and more will pop into your head. Don't stop and think about why some happening, circumstance, thought, or person came to mind. Just write. The third step in mining your emotions and attitudes is putting what you wrote in your subcircles into the most appropriate section in a chart that replicates the one you see on the screen. If something you wrote in one of your subcircles doesn't fit into any of the categories listed, create your own category. In column 1, list the catalytic events, circumstances, and people that inspired your aha realization. In the second column, list notable shifts in you, psychologically, emotionally, and behaviorally. These would be after your aha realization. In the third column, list the action steps you took following your aha realization. In the fourth column, list any additional realizations you had as you journeyed forward from your aha moment or realizations. Your completed chart will be a handy reference for developing your storyline. Keep it somewhere safe. Once your subcircles are categorized, put down your pen and think about your emotions and attitude. For each category, ask yourself if there is a common emotional thread, maybe a welcomed emotion such as hope, love, peace, kindness, trust. Or instead, you might notice a painful emotion such as loss, sadness, regret, betrayal, anger, resentment, or anxiety. If you uncover more than one emotion, note them all. It's likely that your emotions will be different for each category. Once you've completed your emotion inventory for each category, ask yourself if there is a common attitudinal thread. Maybe your attitude toward what you've listed in a particular category could be described as enthusiastic, optimistic, conciliatory, forgiving, or grateful. Maybe it could be described as bitter, resentful, vengeful, or spiteful. Again, it's likely that your attitude will differ between categories, and it may even differ within a category. If you uncover more than one attitude, note them all. Here's some more seasoned wisdom. When writing about unfortunate events and circumstances leading up to your aha moment, it's natural for you to revisit emotions you thought were long ago dealt with, and remember attitudes and actions you're not super proud to own. Don't worry about it. Journal about it. Acknowledging and honoring your feelings, thoughts, and regrets by putting them on paper is incredibly healing. Be kind and patient with yourself as you write about and process any residual sadness, resentment, regret, or anger. Healing is not a race to be won. It is a journey that must be taken one teardrop at a time. Not being completely emotionally healed is a perfect reason for gifting your heart-mind wisdom to others. Remember, inspirational authorship is about sharing what happened to you and how you shifted emotionally, psychologically, and behaviorally. It is not about being perfect. That story would be boring.